Hi everyone. So, for our third episode of Myfi Resources, I have Tarra Jackson joining me today. Referred to as Madam Money, Tarra is an award-winning speaker, best-selling author, TV and radio personality, spokesperson, brand ambassador, among many other things. So, Tara's background includes over 20 years of experience as a corporate trainer, loan officer, vice president of lending, executive vice president, and interim president of several credit unions. So Tara also operates a financial consulting firm where she has worked with thousands of clients, which includes executive businesses, actors, and athletes. So Tara, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Right, awesome. So I think it's always just best to start with a brief introduction of yourself for the audience.
Cool. Well, you kind of nailed it. You made me sound really, really important. I appreciate that. But I am just that chick that calls her a chick that used to be a corporate person in the financial industries. And then I was really good at selling debt. I was really, really good at packaging it and selling the debt. And then I realized I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I repented, turned from my wicked ways, and became a financial educator and advocate. So I decided I wanted to teach people the art of financial chess because they were playing financial checkers and getting played. So I teach people that. The first book that I wrote over 10 years ago was called Financial Fornication. And that was to talk about our relationships with money. They're just like our physical and personal relationships, but I just tied it with money. And I talked about how I was financially promiscuous with multiple credit cards. Don't judge me. And then I ended up with financial STDs, substantially tremendous debt, and I needed cures for that. And so I figured if I was dealing with that, even as a financial executive, I knew other people and I knew my clients were. So I figured if sex could sell a cheeseburger with Hardee's, it could sell financial literacy, and it actually did. So that was really cool. That's where I got the name Madam Money from back then. I did my sophomore self-published book called The Four Financial Languages. It's a spinoff of the five love languages. So people love differently, and they also communicate about money differently. And so over my years of counseling different people and going into marriage counselors and translating and interpreting the financial language, I realized there were four dominant languages: saving, spending, investing, and giving. They all speak different dialects. They all have different triggers, positive and negative triggers. So I try to, I did explain that in the book, and then teach people how to be fiscally bilingual, if you will, and talk about those different things. And I've written a couple other books other than that. So I do a lot of business coaching and a lot of financial coaching for a lot of clients and groups and speaking. So that's just a little bit about me. That's a lot.
Right, right. So it's without a doubt that you've been in this industry for quite some time. But what are kind of some of the big obstacles you see that people have when it comes to managing their personal finance?
The biggest obstacle is them not managing. It's just like eating. What is the biggest obstacle of weight gain is that we're not managing what we eat, right? And I can attest to that because I just don't. But people have challenges with their money or live paycheck to paycheck because they're not managing what's coming in and what's going out. And so when they don't name their dollars or they don't tell their money where to go, their money dictates what they can and can't do. And so a lot of people say, well, I can't save and I can't do this, but yet they have money to spend in other places. And so I find it that the biggest challenge of managing money is the not acknowledgement, the not acknowledging and not managing the money that they have coming in.
Right. And so when I think of this, I think, not managing your personal finances, I always revert back to a strategy that we all should utilize, and that's budgeting. And so I feel, and I've touched on this topic with previous guests, and I feel that when it comes to budgeting, it's a reflection of yourself and also, the discipline within yourself. But I feel like there's this kind of intimidation factor with budgeting, and this obviously differs from situation and person to person. But why is it that we have this kind of, that we're kind of intimidating by looking at our finances and really hunkering ourselves down? Is it, that we just kind of spend too much money, and we don't really want to confront ourselves for that. What's kind of your take on, the intimidation factor of budgeting?
A lot of the intimidation factor is the word budget, right? Because a lot of people are intimidated, at least spenders are. And that's where the fiscal linguistics come into play, is that savers love the word budget because they need safety, security, control. They have no problem with understanding where their money is because they want to hoard and hold all of their money. So savers don't have a problem with the word budget. Spenders, on the other hand, and I am a spender at heart, that's my financial language, right? We hate the word budget because when we hear budget, we hear diet, die, deprivation, I can't know, and we don't have time for that negativity in our life, right? And so our pleasure principle is spending. It's the transaction, whether it's $1 or $1,000,000, it's the transaction. And so with a lot of my spender friends or colleagues or, fellows that are spenders, is that we talk about a spending plan. Because if I can look at it as I'm spending on savings, I'm spending on giving, I'm spending on investing, and I'm spending on the things that I want, that's a part of my pleasure principle because it's a part of the transaction. And so I have spending plans, based on what I want to do in my life. I will spend money here, spend money there. When a lot of spenders hear the word budget, they're hearing you can't spend money. And what you don't do is tell a spender that they can't spend money because they will spend your money, my money, and everybody else's money, right? So you want to give them the opportunity through the linguistics. When you're thinking about a budget, you're actually thinking about a spending plan. Investors, on the other hand, they may not have a problem with budgeting, but they like investing. They like the opportunity to invest. Where am I going to get the biggest return on my investment? So they'll invest in savings. They'll invest in buying something if they can get a return. And the return doesn't have to be monetarily. The return can be, I've always wanted this, or it makes my family happen, or whatever. And givers, sometimes they need a giving plan. If they don't like the word budget because they feel like it's going to keep them from being able to give, then you have a giving plan. What are you going to give? And the only problem that I have with my givers that I love so much is they forget to give to themselves. It's just like paying yourself first. You have to give to yourselves. Put on your financial oxygen mask on first so that you can save the world. And so, if you're having a hard time with the word budget and all of that, because when people say, I don't know how to budget, yes, they do. If they can do 4 minus 2 equals 2, they can budget, right? It's just the semantics that hold us back from doing what we should do and what we already know how to do, because we have that negative trigger that I talk about in my book.
Right. Yeah. And I totally agree. And that keyword that you mentioned, plan. So I think that this really comes down to what we ultimately see for ourselves in the future, our financial strategies. So when you mention that investors, they love to save and budget and do all these things because they're looking at the opportunities in doing so. So I think, being educated and understanding the power of budgeting and implementing strategies is more so a reflection of your goals and what you believe you can attain, and it is very possible. um, Even though budgeting may not sound like something significant or like important, but you'd be surprised with the extra couple $100 that you have saved up, and the opportunities that you could do, or that come about with that being saved. So I think that's very important. Budgeting is a tool that I feel like has a negative connotation, like you mentioned. But I think it's definitely something that people should look into and implement within their own, financial strategies.
Absolutely. Call it what you will, whether you call it a budget, you call it a spending plan, or whatever. Call it what you will to make you feel good. But the most important thing is to do it and to execute it, or to contact Jonathan or myself or some other amazing people to get help.
Right. And I think one of the biggest difficulties in doing so, and not just budgeting, but any financial strategy, is sticking to that regimen and making sure that, you're not just budgeting or taking a close look into your finances, just 1 week at a time, and making sure that this is something that's, going on for months at a time, or, sticking to it for even years at a time. I feel like that's when you find most success, is when you stick to a plan long term. And so I think that's very important to, have that baseline and incorporate these strategies, within your own financial situation. So I think that was very important. There are many other tools that we can utilize. But I did want to touch up on your book, DUALpreneur. I found this interesting. I did some research on it, and I found it interesting because it's a process and concept that I'm familiar with.
Mhm.
So essentially, the book covers strategies and tips to becoming a successful employee slash entrepreneur. And so this is something that I'm interested in because before operating my business full time, I worked at a family tax office, so I understand the difficulties in balancing and doing both. Um, and in most cases, you won't have the capital to fully quit your job and cover all the overhead costs. So could you kind of just give us, your perspective on being a dualpreneur?
Absolutely. So dualpreneur is a trademark. Dualpreneur is actually trademarked by me, and it started off as a group or an organization that provides support services, advice, coaching for people who work full time or part time and wanted to start a side business or be an entrepreneur. And to understand the whole concept of the dual engine income. And some people call it multiple streams of income. But the dual engine income means that, if you think about a passenger plane has a minimum of two engines, like a big passenger plane, a minimum of two engines. And there's reason for that because that second engine acts as a fail safe and thrust, right? Because the plane only needs one engine to fly, but it has two engines just in case, or if we need more power. And that's what our income is as well. Our full-time job is that one engine that keeps us in the air. But if something were to happen to that income, we need a fail safe, a backup, or if we want to do something more, pay off debt more, save more, invest more, or whatever, start that business faster. That's when we have that thrust of that side hustle, that side business, being an entrepreneur that's there. And so when you have that backup and when you have those two engines flying, that helps you sustain a less turbulent financial ride as you're growing your business. A lot of people think that they have to quit their job to become a successful entrepreneur. You don't. And that could be a great transition into becoming a full-time entrepreneur. But I will never encourage anyone that is working full-time and just starting off as an entrepreneur to quit their job. You never do that. Because there are some things about being an entrepreneur that are very unpredictable and unexpected. And if that job is sustaining your rent, your mortgage, and you're supporting a family or whatever, it's kind of irresponsible to cut off that lifeline to start something that's unknown. So that's the whole concept of DUALpreneur, the DUALpreneur Bible, the 10 commandments to start a successful side business is developed to teach you how to leverage the benefits of being an employee at the job and how you can use those to help you grow and start your side business.
Right. And I think that, it's a very complicated process because when you're first venturing out, you kind of just want to, I'm my own boss. I'm going to do my own thing now. And, it takes time for the wheels to, kick in and start turning. So
Mm.
it took me a couple months until I actually, ventured off and quit my job at this tax office. And it was only because, been seeing some success. So I was in a situation where I could, leave my current position. But
Mm.
I think there are many implications with operating a business, especially early on, and it's it's essentially things that people wouldn't really consider or recognize. So, from your perspective, what do you believe people should be wary of? Whether it's filing taxes correctly, making sure you have the right legal business structure, such as single member LLC or sole proprietor. What's kind of your take on being legally compliant from a business owner perspective?
Well, being legally compliant from a business owner perspective is very relative to the business that you're starting. So I always recommend that while you have the money where you can invest in a business coach or someone that has experience, or get a mentor or someone who has experience of being an entrepreneur so that they can guide you through that process. Especially if you have a job, now is the time to maybe enlist an accountant or an attorney to help you through that process because each state is different. Each profession is different, whether you have a location, whether you're virtual, whether you're Jersey, Delaware, New York, or Georgia, or whatever. There are different things, and so you can DIY it, but it's going to cost you your time. And if you do it wrong, it ultimately can cost you more money. So you're going to pay you're going to pay now or pay later. So you either want to invest your money so that you get the knowledge faster, so you can execute faster and make more money faster, or you're going to pay with your time and it's just going to take you longer to figure it out and longer to make money. And I say that from experience because I thought I could DIY it the first time, and I pretty much had a $50,000 vacation for a year trying to be an entrepreneur. So it cost me $50,000, whereas if I just hired $5,000 for a coach, I probably could have made $50,000 within that year. So I always tell people that while you can enlist or consult with a professional, either an accountant or an attorney, especially a tax professional, so you understand the tax ramifications, because you don't want to become an incorporation or an LLC and not under, LLC, S Corp, C Corp, it's all that involved. You don't want to pick the wrong one and be double taxed or not be able to take advantage of certain tax options. So definitely consult with a professional like Jonathan to deal with that. The biggest thing that I found and congratulations from being able to, transition within a few months. There are some people that it takes a couple years to transition, and it's okay. There's not a specific timeline as to when you're going to do this. And some people don't want to leave their job. They want to do both because they love what they do, and it's okay. It is so okay. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. And thank you for, acknowledging that. I could say that it wasn't easy. It took a lot of effort and consistency, but I'm a firm believer that with anything worth having, that those are the essentials, consistency and effort. So I think that's very important. I think one thing, so I worked, at a tax office, so I had the opportunity to, be, collaborate with a CPA for the time that since I began my recruiting firm. So I think it's very important to seek out resources that can assist you with, specifically with professionals, that steer you in the right direction. But so I wanted to move on to one of your next books, 10 Simple Steps to Improving Your Credit Score and Fast. And it seems that credit is a topic which most people truly don't understand, specifically their credit situations and, actions that they can take to improve their credit. So without going into, the entire book, I kind of want to just discuss some key pointers people should consider when either applying for credit or looking to improve their credit.
The first thing you want to do is know what is going on. No one should know more about your personal business or your credit than you. So one, in order to fix anything or see if anything needs to be fixed, you got to know what's going on in there. So get copies of your credit reports, the three major credit reporting agencies, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. And you can go to annualreport.com, annualcreditreport.com, and get copies, free copies, at least a year. In some states, it's 2 years of your credit report. So you can see what's on there. If there's information that is incorrect, you want to dispute it. If there is information that is correct, that is great. Even if it's bad, if it's correct, it is. A lot of people want to dispute correct information. And based on the Fair Credit Reporting Act, it may come off for a limited time, but if it's accurate information, it will come back. You can dispute this stuff online. I don't recommend it. Because if you dispute it online, it gives them 60 days to respond, versus if you do it in writing, it requires them 30 days to respond. And just like, having a budget and saving and everything, it requires consistency. Changing your credit or updating your credit is like losing weight. It's easy to gain the weight. It's harder to get it off and longer to get it off. I can attest to that. I'm still trying to be a size 2. I'm so lying. But if you try to fix your credit now, it's not going to just happen overnight. It may take some time, but it will work. Especially if you have student loans. I had student loan debt out there. They were delinquent. I got with a student loan attorney that assisted me with that process. And as soon as I fixed that issue, my credit score went up 60 points, 60 freaking points, right? So you can take certain actions to be able to correct your score. Jonathan, I know that you all have probably talked about this, but most people don't understand the anatomy of a credit score. And so the anatomy of a credit score is very simple. It's 30, 30, 35, 15, 10, 10. 30, 35, 35, 30, 15, 10, 10. 35, 30, 15, 10, 10. Okay. So 35 is your payment history, how you pay your bills. You pay them on time or you don't. If you pay them on time, it helps 35% of your score. If you don't and you're late, it's going to hurt 35% of your score. 35% of your score. 30 is what your utilization is. How much credit are you using on your lines of credit? Your credit cards, your lines of credit, any revolving debt, right? So if you have credit that is at the limit, that's going to hurt 30% of your score. If you keep those balances low and you pay them by the cycle date and keep them low, it's going to help you 30% of your score. Now there's a debate. What is the balance that I should keep on it? Is it 30%? Is it 5%? If you keep it below that 30% of your line of credit, it's going to help you. Okay. 15 is how long have you been in the game? How long have you had credit? That is like a fine wine with time, just like with women. The older we get, the better we get. So the more experience you have with credit, that helps 15% of your score. The 10 is your diversity in credit. You know, are you just one of those credit card queens and you only have credit cards? They want to see, do you have experience in other types of credit? You know, do you have experience in managing a car loan, a mortgage, a personal loan or installment loan and revolving credit, you know? So they, you know, that's 10% of your score. So if you have diversity and you have experience in managing different types of credit, that helps 10% of your score. And the last one is the 10% of new credit. Who is looking at your credit cookies? Like who's really checking out your credit, pulling your credit report, doing inquiries, and also how much new credit have you had? You know, so if you're one of those that are shopping for credit and you open up 5 accounts within a 6-month period of time, that could potentially hurt your credit because or if you have 20,000 inquiries on your credit, on your credit report within a 2-year period of time, to a financial institution like I used to be or work for, that means you're shopping for credit. That could be a red flag for me right now. So the less amount of people you have looking at your credit cookies, pulling that inquiry, or how many accounts you're opening in a short period of time, that can help 10% of your score. So just remember 35, 30, 15, 10, 10. I put a beat to it, but I don't know if I have that much further.
I like that. I think I won't forget that now. And I think that's important, you know, understanding the anatomy of the credit score because, you know, I had Neil Godfrey join me for an episode and we discussed credit briefly. And she mentioned that, you know, credit is a right, not a privilege. And when you have credit, it opens up a lot of doors and opportunities. And if you utilize credit the right way, then, you know, essentially you have an opportunity to.
You have leverage.
Yeah, exactly. Leverage. So, but in terms of, because I think there's like a lot of ways to go about credit and obtaining credit, but for someone, you know, within, you know, their early days, I believe you can get a credit when you turn 18. But what would you believe the best situation would be for an individual, a young individual with no credit, no credit cards? What do you think the best situation for them to jump into a credit card?
To get a secured credit card where you have to cover it, or it has to be collateralized or secured with your cash. The reason why I say that, for 2 reasons, right? For the consumer side, if you can't save for it, then you don't need to borrow for it at this point when you're 18, right? Or when you're starting out credit. So if you can save $500, you can hold the $500, use that as security to the credit card. On the financial institution side, when there is a secured credit card, there's relatively no risk or minimal risk to the credit card company or the financial institution. So if for whatever reason you decide or you don't want to pay or you can't pay the $500, they can at least take the $500 in your savings account to pay it off. So there's relatively no risk, right? But as long as you have the card and you're holding that savings, 1, you could potentially be earning interest on that savings. And then 2, it's going to reflect on your credit report as an unsecured. So as you're paying it, and I recommend you pay it off, don't use it all up and only pay minimum payments. You can, but you're just going to pay the financial institution interest. You're just going to help us make more money. I'm just saying. So use it, pay it off, use it, pay it off. That's going to help you to build credit and build up that credit score, because your credit report is just a financial Facebook. Okay. So whenever you do good, it's going to tell everybody you're the bomb credit. You're awesome, right? Or if you do bad, they're going to be like, nah, dude, don't mess with that person because they don't know how to manage credit. Right. And your credit score is like your financial grade, like your grade book in your school. So each account has a grade, but your GPA is that credit score. So you could have A's and then one B, and that's going to mess up your 4.0 and make it maybe a 4.8 or whatever. You could have all of these accounts that are really good and one account that was messed up, and that's going to affect your credit score. And so just remember that credit score is like your grade, your GPA. So it's your financial GPA.
Right. And I think it's very important to just keep up with your credit if you do have, a credit card, multiple accounts, just so, you want to make sure nothing's delinquent so that it doesn't negatively affect you, essentially in the long run, because I feel as though when your credit dips, it's hard to, it's easier for it to dip than it is to go up, essentially, doing the right thing to make it, make your credit increase. Um, but so I think that's very important, recognizing your credit, your situation, and your approach to credit. But so the last thing I wanted to cover revolves around your book, your four financial languages. And I love this particular topic of the book because it dives into being an effective communicator when it comes down to talking about money with either your spouse or business partner. And I believe this is an important topic to discuss because finance can be a sensitive topic for some, depending on their situation. And I believe that not approaching this the right way can have detrimental relationship implications. So could you kind of just give us a quick runaround on that book?
Yeah, the four financial languages, as I mentioned before, is like the love languages. Everybody loves differently. So you may need personal touch. I may need affirmation or whatever to fill up our love tank, right? So when we say, I love you, just because you love one way doesn't mean I love the same way as you, right? And so to be a better lover of someone else, you must learn their love language and love them in the way they need to be loved. And it's the same thing with dealing with money, communicating about money. The person that you're with more than likely does not think about money, speak about money, or interpret money the same way. That's why savers and spenders, although they love each other, they argue about money all the time because they're speaking in two different languages, all right? So a saver needs safety, security, control, and the spender wants to spend the money. If we have access to the money, we're going to spend it, okay? Even a saver and investor may argue about money because a saver, again, needs safety, security, control, but the investor understands risk and is willing to take the relative risk. And the saver doesn't like risk. They're very risk adverse, right? But if you understand your partner's financial language, you'll be able to communicate in their way. So for example, if I'm a spender and Jonathan, you're a saver, and I want to buy this big screen TV because I'm a techie, if I come to you and say, Jonathan, let's buy this big screen TV, you're going to be like, no, we already have 6 TVs in the house. We don't need another TV, right? So I would need to communicate and understand where you're coming from as a saver. Jonathan, I was looking at some TVs, would love to get an updated one because this one's old, or we can give it to whoever, but I need your help. Can you help me find a TV that fits within our budget, or help me shop around for the best deal so we can save more and help us stay within our budget for this TV? Now, Jonathan may not say, yeah, sure, but he'll definitely consider it because I am taking consideration of our budget and saving, right? Even though I want to spend. So it's better to open up that way because we'll be able to have a conversation. Even if he disagrees, like we don't really need it, then I can plead my case to, the TV we have is one of those big fat TV with the big butts on the back end. Come on, dude. Nobody has those anymore. It's about to die. We just need to update this and we can replace it and all that. And I can go through my argument and we can have the conversation about it. But more than likely, a lot of people approach the other person in their language. And, if I'm going to approach you, I'm approaching you in my language. And then you'll get a negative trigger because you speak a different language. And that's what caused those financial fights, those dollar disagreements, those money misunderstandings.
Right. And I think that's just like a fantastic analogy. And I feel like it's a terrible situation when there's a fallout or, with either in business, partners, or a spouse or significant other. When there's a fallout regarding money, I feel like that it's comes down to communicating and communication. And so that I think it's very important to understand each side and pretty much why and how to approach from each perspective. um,
Absolutely.
so so this is geared towards a younger audience. So I do want to get, I wanted to get your perspective on from like a parent's perspective in when and how to implement, finance to a younger individual, or for this instance, we'll say like their children, because at the end.
So go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yep. So I just think like at the end of the day, like these principles and this knowledge shouldn't be retained, when they're 16, 18. It should be something that should be recognized and implemented when they're younger, so that when
Mhm.
they are 16 and 18, they can, utilize what they know and, put that into action. So from like not early adolescence, but how do you think a parent should approach finance for their kids?
There's a couple ways that you can do that. The first way, if you want to start teaching them early about budgeting, I use what's called the bucketing system, the bucket system. Okay. So I give them 4 buckets and they can determine what they want to spend money on in these 4 buckets. So one needs to be savings. So there's some have tos. Okay. Have to save, have to give. What are the other 2 things you want to do? Maybe you want to save for college. Maybe you want to save to buy your bike. Maybe you want to save to do something else. You want to spend money for this. You want to buy candy or whatever. They have these other 2 buckets. Every time they get money, they have to divvy up the money in 4 ways. So that teaches them math and division and all of that, right? So if they have $1, a quarter goes in each bucket. Okay. If they have $5, it's evenly divided. So that teaches them to allocate funds for certain things. As they get older, the percentage may change. So instead of 25% across the board, it may be 10% giving, 10% for whatever, or 10% saving, and then the rest you can do whatever, but you have to put the money aside. So that's teaching them how to save up for what they want, and also how to allocate their money and control where their money is going, even if they're spending it. Okay. So that's the bucket system that works wonders, especially when they're young. Because as soon as they get their first dollar for their birthday or whatever, they need to understand how to allocate it, and that whole dollar is not meant to be spent. Okay. The second thing is what I call financial scavenger hunt or investment scavenger hunt. And this, the financial scavenger hunt is teaching kids how to find the best bargains when shopping. So you include them on the shopping list. What do we want to buy? We need to buy cereal. We need to buy this. And their job is to find the best price for what we need to buy. I know we want to get this cereal, but can you find the same type of cereal, maybe a different brand that costs less? And however, if we're able to save money on the groceries, then we'll go out and do something fun. You'll reward them for saving. So that teaches them how to shop wisely for certain things. Okay. The investment scavenger hunt is finding what is that one item or 2 items in your house that you buy the most. Is it toilet paper or whatever? And that name brand company that you buy, say my grandfather, he loves Cheerios. So that's General Mills. So we would find out, is General Mills publicly traded? If it is, what is the symbol? And we talk about the symbol, and then we go and look up the symbol and see what the stock price is, how much is it for one share, and then what is it doing? Is it growing or is it not growing? So if for long term it is going upward, that may be something that we want to invest in as a family. And so we would identify that, hey, it costs this much for one share. Collectively as a family, how many shares are we going to buy or can buy? And then as we get the share, we're going to watch it as it grows or if it dips and make a decision. So that gets kids very interested in stock and investing. So when they get older, they won't be scared to invest like many adults are.
Right. And I think it's important that we plant these seeds early. And I love the bucket system, because that gives kids, the good visual of seeing, their money being saved over time. And, I would assume that eventually over a period of time that the bucket would be getting big, like the money in the bucket would be getting bigger and bigger. So would most likely their smiles on their faces, uh,
Mm-hmm.
because
Oh,
there's
and I also do money trees. So I taught my son how to grow a money tree, and all it is a mason jar, and we start off putting our spare change in there, and then when we have extra dollars, we start putting in. So those are the leaves. But as you grow, and then when your money jar gets so full that you can't put any more leaves or anything in there, then we dump it into a savings account so we can grow another money tree.
I love that. So I feel like there's just tons of creative ways to go about it, but the most important thing I feel is, implementing these at an early stage so that essentially we can plant these seeds, and these kids, they grow financially aware and are most likely more likely to succeed because they are aware of their finances at an early age. Uh,
Absolutely.
so I did want to just cover one last thing. This is geared towards the younger generation, essentially our efforts in promoting financial literacy. So with that being said, I think it's very important that we implement financial curriculum and resources within our school system so that every kid has access to these resources and knowledge. But from your perspective, I wanted to see kind of your take on the direction of financial curriculum within the school systems, and pretty much what we could do to kind of amplify, this situation.
Mhm. A lot of those are based at the state level. For example, Tiffany Alish, the Budgetnista, she's amazing, a good friend of mine. She did that in New Jersey. And so, but she got with the legislation in New Jersey or in that state to work that out. And it took some time, but she got with the legislator. They drafted up the legislation. They had to get it through. But I really encourage you to get involved with the legislation in your area, whether it's your city, your county, or your state, and be an advocate for that, and let them know that you're available to help with the process and to talk about that or help to build the curriculum for that. And so a lot of times they don't do it because they don't have they're doing so many other things that they may not have the internal resources to really focus on that. So they're looking for someone that can help them through that process. So find out where your state is with having financial literacy in the curriculum. I am an advocate of that, had been for many years. So to go in that, whether you're in a state, for example, I'm in Delaware, and I'm avidly speaking with senators and everything to talk about what can we do to add financial literacy as a requirement in curriculums, and waiting to find out, how can I get involved? Who do I need to talk to? How can I help to draft the legislation in that? So we don't know unless we ask. And then be a resource of financial literacy. Provide those, get with nonprofit organizations to provide workshops, free workshops or whatever, so they see you in the community. Because just because the schools don't do it doesn't mean the churches can't do it, doesn't mean nonprofits can't do it, doesn't mean you can't do it. Because the parents can't teach what they don't know. So we have to be able to provide those resources to the parents to teach the kids, or to provide the resources to help teach the kids.
Right. And this is something that, as a business owner, I started out pretty young, and over time, I've found that personal finance is a topic that is essentially not taught. Um,
Mhm.
at least from my high school, my college. Well, college is a different story,
Mhm.
but I think it's a topic that everyone should be well informed and competent in. So I do definitely think that we are heading in the right direction. There's definitely been a lot more conversations being had regarding financial curriculum, and just given the current situation that we're in with inflation, gas prices, cost of living rising,
Mhm.
et cetera, I think that it's imperative now more than ever that for the generation upcoming,
Mhm.
that they're more aware than we are, because essentially that's what we'd want to do. We'd want to have our upcoming generation be better than we are, and we want to leave the environment and the society community better for this particular generation.
Yeah, what the pandemic did was it made us have this conversation right? It made us have to have the conversation because we started losing, people started losing jobs and opportunities. So we had to start talking about savings and budgeting and all of that stuff. But the second thing, have you noticed that in the schools, they'll teach sex education, but they won't teach financial education?
Right.
How about that?
Right. And I believe, there's perspectives on that, they could be equally as important, but I think financial curriculum is something that shouldn't be turned away from or, short-eyed. And I think, our efforts right here, is all about promoting financial literacy and having representatives and lawmakers acknowledge this as a serious situation. Uh,
Absolutely.
that eventually I believe will have even more detrimental impact if we don't prepare the younger generation. So I think that was fantastic. You provided, incredible insight. But we are near the end of our timer. Do you just have any last remarks that you would like to, give?
Oh, sure. Start saving something sooner. Check your credit cookies, annualcreditreport.com. Learn your financial language. Get the book for financial languages, and stay contacted with me. You can contact me at madammoney.com, MADAMMONEY.com. Hit me up on social media. Would love to give you a virtual hug.
Fantastic. And just one last thing, I want to give you like a little promotion. Do you have any upcoming projects or books or anything in the works that we can look forward to?
Right now, Financial Fornication, the four financial languages, and the DUALpreneur book can all be purchased on madamoney.com or amazon.com. I do have a conference coming up later on this year, probably in July, called the Side Gig Con, and that is for dualpreneurs. So if you have a side gig and you want to learn how to maximize your employer benefits to start, maintain, or grow your side business, you need to be there. So you can go to sidegigcon.com, sidegigcon.com. Keep up to date with that. But that's all I have for you right now, Jonathan. You're doing an amazing job. Thanks for having me.
We can all we can do is try, right?
Good job.
But then again, thank you again for your time. I found this incredibly insightful, and I think this would be incredibly beneficial for a younger audience. So thank you for your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.